Hello, this is the 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time. I saw a meme the other day. A meme, for those of you who don't know, and I just found out myself, a meme is a picture on the internet that usually has some text associated with it, a caption of some kind, and this picture is then copied and spread around the aforementioned internet through social media on Facebook and Instagram and the like. Now, sometimes they're funny, but sometimes they're mean-spirited. And sometimes they're political propaganda generated by a foreign entity during an election cycle, allegedly, they say. And so I saw this meme, and it was an image of Jesus. You know the one where they make him a white guy with a red robe. And the caption said, "I wouldn't put children in cages. Hashtag, what would Jesus do?" And I thought, well, they're not wrong. He probably wouldn't put anyone in cages, and definitely not children. By all accounts, he loves the little children. The song says, all the little children of the world. And it really messed up the sermon that I was preparing for this week, because I really wanted to talk about this second reading from Galatians, where Paul is talking about Jesus freeing us from this yoke of slavery to religious laws, and how the whole law, everything that we try to abide by, the whole law is fulfilled in one statement, one commandment from Jesus our Lord on how to be a human in the world. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's it, just one. And this passage in Galatians really bothered me, because if Paul is talking about the Jewish law, and if you read the whole passage, he is in fact talking about the Jewish law, then I don't understand why if 613 laws and commandments on how to be a good Jewish person are unnecessary for salvation, then why do we need 2,865 paragraphs in our catechism on how to be a good Catholic? What makes their rule book more of a yoke of slavery than ours? I mean, did Jesus really set them free from their law and then impose 4 times as many laws on us? That's what I wanted the sermon to be about. But I suppose it's just as well that I got distracted by Jesus and his meme on the internet. Because part of following Jesus is having faith and trusting and believing and praying that he will make all things known to us in his time. And I trust and believe and pray that Jesus will help me understand the things that don't make sense to me. Part of following Jesus is realizing that we don't ever really understand everything, but we know in our heart that it's true. So I keep praying. And it made me realize that the yoke of slavery is not just about codified religious and moral standards. The yoke that Jesus freed us from is the yoke of slavery to this world. Slavery to the idea that this world and all that goes on in it is what's important. We spend an awful lot of time talking about life eternal and our everlasting reward and the kingdom of heaven. But then in the same breath, we spend a lot of time talking about how to get ahead in this world here. So this slavery to this world and this world's ideas is the thing that brings us to all the places where we don't need to be. The place where I don't want to have others have what I have. I don't want to share what I've got. I have to protect what I've worked so hard for. I've got to defend my birthright. It brings us to the place where we think that we need to protect this geographical area that has formed over time into a socio-political entity that I belong to and you belong to and we're all a part of, a place where we think we need walls to keep people out of our geographic space and cages to put them in for when the walls don't work. It's this slavery to the world, to its allurements, its temptations, its standards, its morals, its codified behaviors that leads us to the biting and the devouring of one another that Paul speaks of in Galatians today. Because even though we may be free from Jewish religious law, and let's be honest, we're pretty free from the catechism, most of us, we are still enslaved to the world's set of norms, the world's law of the jungle, the world's law of the land, the world's standards of what it means to be a good person, the world's interpretation of what we should or should not do, what we should or should not think, what we should or should not believe. And Jesus is setting us free from all of that. Jesus is setting us free from thinking like the world thinks. He's setting us free from having to listen and believe what the world says. Because the world says we can't just take people in and welcome them and love them. The world says we don't have enough of the world's stuff for all of these immigrants. The world says that you have to have rules and regulations for who belongs and who doesn't, who can share in our American gravy train. The world tells us who is worth caring about, who we should care for. The world says we decide what's right because we humans are in charge. And your lovey-dovey Christianity, all of that love your neighbor, welcome the stranger, care for the sick, take care of widows and orphans, it's all just a bunch of stuff that Jesus said 2,000 years ago that we can't really do because that's not how the world works. And we don't really understand how it could be different. We don't have faith that Jesus' way actually works. And we won't let Jesus set us free. We won't let Jesus move our hearts to where they ought to be. We won't let Jesus show us the way. We won't let Jesus set us free to truly love how he loves, to take our stony hearts and replace them with loving ones. We won't let him set us free from the world's disbelief that his one commandment on how to be a human in the world will actually work and is actually all we need. Instead, we go on biting and devouring one another, trying to get ahead in this world until we consume each other instead of having faith and trusting and believing and praying that God will help us to understand what we don't understand, how to be free from the world's yoke of slavery. We just won't do what Jesus would do. And what would Jesus do? Well, he wouldn't put children in cages.